Yes. May this be worthy. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome to New Faces, and it's nice to be back. I was gone for a week in sunny, snowy Colorado, which was quite wonderful. Very fresh air and very high up, 8,200 feet. So I was really surprised when I was back here. Suddenly, I felt like I was kind of lifting off the ground. So much oxygen available. Tonight, I wanted to talk about refuge. This came up on my trip in a conversation with my daughter, who ordinarily is pretty with it as far as refuge in big view, big mind, a wider view. But because of a lot of difficulties at work, she kind of lost track of it. And so we ended up having a wonderful conversation, which reminded me how important it is to understand what we mean when we say taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We hear that word these days in relation to the millions of people who are stranded in untenable circumstances and living in great danger and certainly uncertainty. We all take it for granted, certainty for granted. We think everything's so certain. And mostly we can count on tomorrow having the same conditions pretty much as today, except every once in a while something happens and it's not the way it is. Most of us come to Dharma practice because for one reason or another we become very aware of the uncertainty of our lives, the difficulty of our life, the unsatisfactoriness of it, occasionally the danger of it, when we receive a diagnosis that really throws us off. So we talked about taking refuge in the Dharma, which is not going to actually change the conditions of our life particularly, except the condition of our own mind. So when we're taking refuge, we're saying, I have I'm paying attention to what is the liberation that I can, with my ordinary human mind, with my ordinary mind equipment, tap into, that will relieve me of the stress and anxiety that can, and different, and just the niggling dissatisfaction or the sense of things are not quite complete or not quite right with me and my life, right? So we take refuge in the three treasures. So I'm going to go through a few points about this that, as I think of refuge, I think is really relevant. Taking refuge in the Buddha. Well, on one hand, this is the historical Buddha who was just an ordinary, he was a prince. This is the mythic story. We don't know for sure. There's some evidence that there was such a person. But the archetype of a regular human being who felt that life was incomplete, something was that didn't understand if this life contains sickness, old age, and death, how am I going to reckon with my life? And so he went in search of this. And so all of us confront some variation on those themes. Taking refuge in the Buddha is also more personally taking refuge in our capacity to open our awareness much more fully to the conditions that govern our lives. We can know only a very small portion of the conditions, but they are characterized by interdependent arising. Everything comes together all at once. There is not any kind of permanent self. This is good, and there's also impermanence. Everything passes away. Everything that arises, all forms that arise, dissipate when the conditions that maintain them dissolve. This is very simply demonstrated when a car passes by any sound, actually. You can just hear. It's far away, but let it go. This is true of everything, every moment of our life. It's true of our breath. The breath that you're involved with right now is gone, replaced by the next. So our ability to be aware of how brief, how passing, how fragile, how multi-determined, and how beyond our grasp each portion of our life is. We take refuge in Dharma, the teachings that have been developed and passed along to us, realization by generation after generation after generation over the course of 2,500 years, and maybe before that. There's so much wisdom that has been gleaned from taking a very, very close look at experience, and they pass it along to us. But even more interesting than the teachings from somebody else is the teachings of every aspect of our life. And the dharmas are all phenomena, everything, material phenomena and immaterial, thoughts, beliefs, sound, anything that you can name is a phenomenon. Anything that you can perceive is a phenomenon. These are all dharmas, the dharmas of our life. So taking refuge in the dharma is really pointing at a willingness to be aware of what is filling our minds at the moment. Okay, so how willing are you to be present to your own experience? And that willingness, I emphasize this all the time because it's so easy not to want to pay attention to certain categories of experience. Mm-hmm. Physical pain. I was continuing to do full bows for a while, and then finally I realized I better pay attention to this pain in my knee, which is why I'm not going down any longer until I figure out what's going on with it. So pain we're unwilling to feel, and also anguish, anxiety. There's a lot of things to be anxious about in this modern moment of our world. So if we pay attention to this anxiety, what then? So we'd rather tune it out and take refuge in entertainment and distraction. Take refuge in a drink or something that just replaces the moment of anxiety with something that is much more pleasant to involve ourselves in. So to be willing to take refuge in the Dharma of this present moment is something that we all reckon with in our practice. If we come to Dharma just for to develop reliable bliss states, we're actually only taking partial refuge. And then refuge in the Sangha. The Sangha, which is, Reb Anderson talks about how Dharma friendships are not the usual kind of friendships, because we all share the same aspiration to be aware of how we speak, think, and act in such a way that we're not planting seeds for further dissatisfaction and difficulties for ourselves and for others. And there's a passage in several different places in the Pali Canon. Thus have I heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Sakyas, which was his clan. The Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side and said, "Venerable Sir, I understand spiritual friendship is to be fully half of the spiritual life. That is, good friendship, good companionship, good comradeship." "Not so, Ananda," says the Buddha, "not so, Ananda. This is the entire spiritual life. That is good friendship, good companionship, good comradeship. When a monk has good friendship, good companionship, good comradeship, then it is to be expected that they will develop and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path. It's very hard to develop the way of life that we live as practitioners, as Buddhist practitioners, unless we have a group that we do it with. It's very difficult out in the world of desire and clinging and aversion to maintain the steadiness that practicing together in Sangha really helps us do. If we live with people who are practitioners, that's wonderful. That's a special blessing. But not all of us have people we live with who are Dharma practitioners. And that is, so we come to Sangha to have companionship in the way, so that we can bring the benefits of our practice to the people we live with and work with, to our neighbors, to everybody whose lives touch ours. So we're all in this together in Sangha, taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Maizumi Roshi, who is my Dharma grandfather, your Dharma great-grandfather, would talk about to appreciate your life, that when we take refuge, we are setting up the circumstances to help us really appreciate our life, to bring the widest view to all of the circumstances of our life. So what is true when we're appreciating something? Well, first of all, we're noticing it. We're noticing all the different things that happen in a day. The kindness of a neighbor, the functioning of the car to get us somewhere, or our bodies to be able to get us somewhere. We just go like this and we have fresh water. So really noticing all of the ways in which the stuff of modern life serves us, then the experience of gratitude goes into appreciation and respect. Respect. This culture that we live in is a culture of disrespect. And so part of appreciating our life is walking around through the routines of the day with a sense of respect for all of the stuff, all of the dharmas that touch us, including the difficulties that come along. how can we respect the difficulties? Those are the things that really prod us to pay attention, really call on us to behave in a way that remains open and connected. So in that way, we can really appreciate everything that comes along. I think about people who are in refugee camps, people who are en route, who are waiting at the border, who are in boats in the middle of the ocean, boats that are filled with way more people than they are meant to hold. And what characterizes that state is fear and perhaps faith. That is a state, when there's, I don't know if anybody has been in a circumstance like that here, but certainly as we tune into the news, the thing that's so painful and difficult and anxiety provoking is our ability to imagine ourselves in that circumstance. We shouldn't avoid that. We don't avoid knowing about some of the dire circumstances that are going on. But to approach it, how do we approach that with appreciation? I think to remember that this self is, we share a self with all of these people, and to add our prayers, our imagining refuge, taking action if there is some action to be taken, and there's lots of things we can be doing to address some of these situations more specifically. But what comes to me when I'm looking at the news and listening to what's going on in just so many parts of the world is how powerless I feel and how vulnerable. And that's the truth. There's something about the collective will that is beyond our individual. There's only so much effect we can have, and so we want to be very careful to use all of our mind's energy and our heart's energy deliberately to add whatever kind of energetic contribution we can make through how we use our mind. Not putting all of our energy into anxiety, but put it into prayer. Put it into prayer, put it into visualization of safety. If you wake in the middle of the night, when I wake in the middle of the night sometimes, my lifelong habit has been to send metta, loving kindness, to all of the children of the world. That's the continuation of this species. They are being formed in the current conditions. So we take refuge in what is most essential, continually taking refuge in what is most essential, and don't lose track of it so much. Don't get lost in your own self-concern, although we need to pay attention to what we need. But keep awareness wide and all-inclusive. So I just wanted to say, to emphasize we can live from fear or we can live from faith. And faith in Buddhism it comes from experience. When we begin to open awareness to all of the ways that our life is unfolding and all of the help we've received, and if any of us have come to Dharma, you can be sure we've received a lot of help that we can't even name, but here we are. And that is what we base faith in. I've gotten here, and I am so supported by whatever has brought me here, and by the awareness that it's possible to really be awake in the moment, caring, and not lose track. Suzuki Roshi said, Zen is not some kind of excitement, it is the practice of constancy. And I just really was very inspired by that statement. First, I was surprised by it when I first came across it. Constancy, how boring. But now, it's really refuge. It's another way of talking about refuge. So, I hope we all notice what we take refuge in. And when we've forgotten refuge and we're taking refuge in something that actually doesn't necessarily plant seeds for future openness and connection. Because whatever we take refuge in is not only for now, but it's the seeds that we're planting for what comes next. So whenever you find yourself in a fear state or whatever variation, refuge can be remembering faith and coming back to the practice of the present moment in the body, in company with all beings. Remembering that refuge. Then I also wanted to talk a bit about giver, receiver, and gift. In our Oryoki ceremony, our eating ritual, we chant, now we open Buddha's bowls. May we with all beings realize the emptiness of the three wheels, giver, receiver, and gift. The giver, receiver, and gift marks every moment of our life. We're always in every position, actually. It's always functioning. Giver it's the first of the perfections, dana, giving freely what is needed. That's all we ever need to attend to, actually, what is needed in this moment, and giving freely of it. Many of us do-gooders are not so good at receiving and may perceive receiving as separate from giving. But actually, receiving is part of giving. Because if I am willing to receive, then I am giving the opportunity to somebody else to give. And this is particularly a challenge in the aging process, because we go through in our life stages, the longest central portion of our life is our majority, from no longer children, and we're taking care of the work of the world. We're taking care of all kinds of people and work. But then we get to retirement, and that can be a real bummer if you have no particular respect and value for receiving, because the physical powers that we have will really diminish no matter how well we've taken care of ourselves, and we are much more on the receiving end, which can be a wonderful practice and an important practice. But even for when we're younger, being able to receive the teaching of elders. This is part of, I think of this in relation to this culture of disrespect that we have, and how we're not, and we probably never have been, a culture that valued elders and made a place for them. Us. Got to get used to that. But what happens if we do not have the ability to recognize the gifts, even the quirkiness of people. As we age, we have more inner permission to be as quirky as we actually are. Whereas in the middle part of life, you really want to be normal, so you really kind of clamp down on your and anyway, so it's important to be able to give, to receive, and also notice everything as a gift. Everything is a gift. Generosity is very joyful. Stinginess is very filled with fear. So that's another way to look into refuge when you're feeling stingy. In whatever way, emotionally, or you have something you don't want to share. You have a really delicious piece of cake and you don't want to share it with your friend who says, "Ooh, that looks really good. Can I have some?" "Oh, no, I have to save some for my neighbor later." Anyway, so getting so much more tuned into what gets in the way of full refuge. Full refuge. It's a very simple concept, but it's a continual practice. And then one other thing is who is taking refuge? If we're looking at, okay, right at this moment, what am I taking refuge in? Lost in a movie or something. What am I taking refuge in? Well, it can be entertainment. It can be companionship. It's not about judging good and bad, but really looking much more deeply in. Thich Nhat Hanh is always talking about looking deeply into. Look more deeply into any experience. And that's the practice. It's not judging, it's not getting rid of anything in our experience, but it's really seeing more deeply into the nature of it and how it's functioning. Chosen always would talk about how enlightenment must function. Well, what is enlightenment? Presence. Full, open awareness, presence, and a very open and connected heart. A real awareness to how everything emerges together. You can't even slip a piece of paper in between any moment right now. This is all emerging together. This is the only moment, right? This is it. So I want to express my appreciation for your careful listening. And I hope this is reminding all of us. As I prepared this, I was thinking, I hope this just reminds everybody, all of this. This isn't news, but it's a reminder to take minute care of your life and everything. Appreciate every aspect of it. Let's see, anything else? So my hope is that, this evening and tomorrow, as you go through the day, you'll bring this to mind. So what's my refuge right now? What am I taking refuge in? How much am I appreciating this situation? What am I contributing? What am I giving? What am I receiving? What are the gifts? You might find yourself walking around with a little bit of a smile on your face. And it's particularly potent when things are rough. And you grim, you get into it, and then you remember, oh, refuge. Oh, this relief is available to me at all times. So may we all really practice with great vigor together. And thank you so much for listening.